Hello, and welcome to Automat Live Coding. This is the stream where we write a game automation app called Automat. Show you how it looks. This is how Automat looks. In this environment, you build macros out of smaller toys. You have timer that can wait some time. And once it's reaching the end, this cable lights up. This is what allows you to chain multiple actions together. I can hook it to like mouse down. I can create another one that will wait something like a second. You know, I can just create sequences of actions like that. Automat is now getting some new features, like the ability to synchronize the state of different objects. By synchronize the state, I mean that when one object is on, it also turns another object on. So now it should be possible to create macros that look like that. So I can synchronize, for example, timer with this switch. But it doesn't work. It should really turn this switch on. And this is not happening. Switches seem to synchronize each other. Okay, there are some bugs, we will resolve them today. But there is another one. Another one is related to the Automat's build on GitHub. So we have a weekly release on GitHub. The problem is that I think this is not the most recent build. This looks like some really ancient build. It takes 56 megabytes. Automat is unfortunately getting fatter continuously. Right now it should be 70 megabytes. So this tells me that there is something wrong with this GitHub build. We're going to see what's going on here and hopefully fix it. But okay, let's start with this synchronization issue. Give me a sec. Okay, I'll disappear in a minute, but I have a couple of seconds now. So let's use those couple of seconds to fire up Z. Actually, I know what I can do. Maybe I'll grab this, get rid of this. I'll actually get rid of everything. Because when I close Automat, it saves its state. So it should tell me exactly what's the state of this synchronization. For example, let's grab a clock and let's synchronize it. So this way works. I can click the this object and it is activating the timer, but the opposite way doesn't work. I guess I know what could be going on. That has to be updated. I think this timer, when it starts running, it doesn't call notify something to notify other objects. So do this. Okay, we need bigger font size. Let's look at the header first. So when this object is executed, we are entering this onRun thing. Right. And then we are calling this begin long running. Okay, so this should have called notify turned on. This should work. We will close it and see the state file. Here is our gear object, and it has two members. There is timer running and flip-flop. Looks correct. Okay, this works. Why was it lagging? Is this release or debug build? Release. Oh. Okay, I think we should implement also on cancel, but something was wrong here. Something was wrong. Let's go to timer. Our timer should also have that was missing. Okay, now it's not working again. Why is it laggy? You know what, I think I will have to reboot my PC or something. Okay, I can cancel it on this. That works. Yeah, it's definitely not synchronizing. See Automat state right now. This is such a bizarre thing. Sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. But I just saved and restored it, so we'll see again. I do new sync, like that. That's a strange thing. I'm also surprised, why is it... Why is it glitchy? Those gears have never been glitchy before. Oh well. I want to see if this will work with mouse button now. Oh, another timer. And here. Hey, it is holding the mouse. And it is releasing the mouse. I don't know what I changed. Okay, I will get rid of everything. This is kind of concerning. I don't know why things are sometimes working, sometimes not. Let's restart everything from scratch. From scratch. let's make 1 second each. Create a simple loop. Right, we have 2 timers. Synchronize this timer with a switch. Seems to work nice. And now let's synchronize this with... I don't have an option here. I can synchronize it like that. Yeah, seems to work. Okay, things are working. Okay, I cannot complain. Okay, the next issue, the big one. I know why it's lagging. Because there was another copy of Automat running in the background. Okay, I guess now it's time to check why the release is not working. Now I need to be a little bit more careful. Okay, so somewhere in Automat, yeah, we have this release timer and release service. It would be nice if there was a coloring scheme for systemd files, but okay. So what it is doing, it is calling this upload release. Let's see how that works. So this is my opt directory, and I can trigger this manually probably. Maybe I should not be doing this on stream. There is my GitHub token that could leak. Okay, release timer is loaded active. Okay, that checks out. So probably it says loaded and active. This is probably when my PC booted up last time. And the next trigger is going to happen in 4 days. I can also check the status of release service. Okay, so this is just a generic method to call GitHub method. This is not going to happen. It didn't pull any updates in a long time. June 11th. So Automat release is a single file release. We have a single executable for Windows and single one for Linux. So we are saying that, hey, those files, they are generated. This one reads main hash file. Okay, so I guess the build step is just skipped. So I wonder what is the proper way to do this? Because release upload and release building, those are clearly two separate steps, completely separate. So I need to somehow mark this. I need to somehow say that this step should it run always? Probably no. No do diff. This is kind of a design problem. It's not really a code problem. There are many solutions to this, many quick and easy solutions. I'm just trying to think which one is going to be the right one. So this build release, it's not really just building a release locally. It's really actually about triggering GitHub Actions, this has a side effect. It's not something that you can just willy-nilly invoke. It's going to produce. It's going to wake GitHub Actions workers. I think this timer, it should execute 2 actions. First build release and then upload release. Let me just double check. If I call it explicitly, will it fetch everything? It doesn't seem like it did. Yeah, I think this input should not be here. Okay, this background. Yeah, I think I will just integrate this. Foresty background. And my main problem with this background is that it's an image from CVTI, but I cannot locate the original source. So I don't know what to put in credits, but I was searching through CVTI. Yeah, I just really couldn't find the original source. But it's a great background. So yeah, going in. I want to do one more thing in release.service. Let's see what exec start is doing. One shot. Okay, this is fine. Find exec start. When type is one shot, this setting may be used multiple times to define multiple commands to execute. This is exactly what we need. Now, I just want to make sure that they will be executed in order. Sweet. This is perfect. This is literally exactly what we need. And what are the O's? Exec start pre and post? I actually wonder what is the difference between ordering commands using exec start pre and post. I guess this is about long running processes. Probably doesn't matter for Matt. Okay, there's this one. So yeah, I think if a step has no inputs, then it's going to always be executed. And then this one, I'm not sure if this is even necessary right now. You get rid of this, push them. It's funny that I'm going through GitHub. Okay, let's now run upload release. It will, I mean, let's see. Yes, I have this line without input. It didn't build the release. It only runs load step.
Knight says,
Hey, everyone.
Hey, Knight. There is going to be a workshop on Automat this evening. Just FYI. We've prepared like an hour-long presentation and quite a few people seem to have signed up. Just letting you know if you want to drop by. This is going to be probably on something like /Zoom. So this is the address. Yeah. Okay. Not that. Okay. Oh, somebody's coming. Be right back.
Nice. Is it free?
Oh, I'm back. Yeah. The entrance is free. If you haven't checked this out, there is a nice community and podcast called Feeling of Computing. And the feeling of computing. I actually couldn't decode this for a long time, but I guess this feeling of computing, it's this feeling of empowerment that you get when you can use computer to make it work for you, to do stuff that you want it to do. Podcast's nice. There is a Slack channel with discussions, and yeah, nice place. Okay, I pushed the updated release service. I pulled it, reloaded the daemon. Now I need to trigger.
Let me take a look.
The community is it contains a bunch of people with very different backgrounds. There are people from academia, people who like entrepreneurs with startups, hobbyists, artists, lots of people with very different perspectives. Let's check this out. What is going on? Is the load credential doing even? Do I need to read all of this? What does it really do? Like, documentation for this doesn't say what it really does. So it is copying the token into this directory. Okay, now I should be able to do build release. What? Okay, of course, build release is not running because those release files, they already exist. So maybe I could just delete them. I think build graph has a way for making sure that executables, oh yeah, they have a special step exactly for running the executable. Okay, so if something has no outputs, then always executed. But in our release, it's the opposite. I know. I can just type fresh. Yeah, I think this is perfect. And actually, because this is added as a generated file, I think this will work. I will check if this will actually happen now. So now GitHub should be building Automat. Switch to actions. Yes, and there is a build running right now. One for Windows, one for Linux. Nice. This typically takes a while. If I remember correctly, it's like this is like building everything from scratch. It's fetching LLVM, building LLVM, fetching Skia, building Skia. This script does a lot of work. I'll do a short break, grab some food, and be right back. I hope it will crash before then, so we have something to debug. Okay, I didn't expect that. Linux release failed. See. Program gperf not found or not executable. What?
I just checked the workshop. There are about 30 people registered. If I can make it, I'll be on Zoom. I usually go to bed at 7 p.m. Norwegian time. By the way, Luma is great. I'm currently working on issue management, and I saw some things in Luma that inspired me.
7 p.m. is a really admirable time to go to bed. I'm never able to go so early. The nice advantage of this is it's probably easier to wake up early. I should try doing something like this as well.
I wake up at 2 a.m. Bichu.
Incredible. I never managed to do something like that, but for some time I was waking up at 5 a.m. and it was a really good period. This is when I was working on the PhD, and early morning is like the time where the mind is working the best. It's nice to work. It's nice to wake a lot of time before the work, because you have this longer period where you can focus on and then work on stuff before you have to dedicate your mind to work for the employer or something like that. Okay, I'm pushing this. This should fix a periodic build, but it's still failing. That failing is suspicious. So lib systemd needs gperf. Okay.
I prefer to wake up at this hour because it's very quiet. It feels good to be awake while everyone else is asleep.
Yeah. Interesting. So lib systemd needs gperf, which is apparently not part of GitHub machines. I could install it like that. But it's suspicious that it popped up now. Okay, so gperf is one issue, and the other issue is okay, no symbols. Let me see how this workflow is configured. Should be something like GitHub workflows build, yeah. Nothing should have changed here. Oh well. Let's take a look at each of them in a sec. Maybe I will ask Claude to take a look at this. Add some food to it, so I will pause the music. I will pause the birds on YouTube, and we will watch one of the interface studies videos. We are going in the reverse chronological order, I guess. Maybe it's bad, maybe we should start from the older ones, but let's check this one.
Welcome to Interface Studies. My name is Saleh. For nearly 40 years, the global digital experience has been governed by a single monolithic paradigm. We can call it the Xerox consensus. It was crystallized at Xerox PARC in the 1970s with the Alto and Star systems, and subsequently popularized by the Apple Macintosh in 1984 and Microsoft Windows in 1995. It went through
I think the name for this is not Xerox consensus, but there is something like Windows, mouse, buttons, something like that. I think WIMP interface, there is a term like that. Yes. Windows icons menus pointer. This is like the category of like all modern desktop interfaces that follow this model.
many iterations and changes. Conceptually, though, it stayed the same. This paradigm relied on two interlocking metaphors: the hierarchical file system and their WIMP interface. Windows, icons, menus, and pointers. It started with desktop operating systems and moved into the web and mobile phones. The original paradigm was designed to bridge a specific historical gap. It was created for a workforce transitioning from physical paper to digital screens. To make the computer intelligible to a mid-century office worker, the interface mimicked their physical reality. Data lives in documents or files, which are placed inside folders or directories, which are stored in filing cabinets. These are disks. These elements are manipulated on a desktop using overlapping windows that simulate sheets of paper shuffling on cluttered desk. Most of the concepts that we live in today were not exactly intentioned to be how they are used today. But throughout the history, it all came together due to many reasons. And it was all brilliantly summarized in Ted Nelson's talk, "There's too much to say, and it goes in all directions." Now, while this model was brilliantly successful in onboarding humanity to personal computing, it has created a cognitive wall. By forcing users to act as filing clerks, manually naming, tagging, and placing blocks of data into hierarchical storage containers, we have prioritized the computer's storage needs over the human brain's associative nature. We have accepted the file not as a technical convenience, but as a fundamental truth of information. Now, in our mind, we do not store the memory of a childhood birthday party in C users memory 1990 events social. Instead, the human memory is associative. A scent of vanilla might trigger a memory of a cake, which triggers a memory of a specific person, which triggers an emotion. Access is immediate, contextual, and nonlinear. This friction between the computer's hierarchical storage model and the human's associative cognitive model creates a permanent tax on our attention, a cognitive load, if you will, spent managing the machine rather than doing the work. And in the late 1970s, one system attempted to erase this distinction entirely. In 1978, IBM...
I've been working on user interfaces for a long time. In fact, before Apple did it, I developed spatial user interfaces for browsers. However, after all this time, I've started to realize that retro terminal interfaces have become more useful for me.
Yeah, it's ironic. I think it's mostly because of the keyboard. It's just mechanically a very good device to interface with computer. There is this information theoretic approach to user interfaces, which tries to measure how many bits per second a user can send to a computer. And I think, I don't have data, but I think if somebody measured this, it would probably turn out that the keyboard is probably it has probably higher bitrate than mouse. There is this this guy Fitzlow, this guy who coined the Fitz law, in his research, like the original research, he's actually quoting the Shannon's information theory as the basis for this. Oh yeah, it is a good one. Yeah, this sounds like exactly like what I was talking about. We'll skip all text and look for the graphs. Oh, but it's probably evaluating those text keys for a very specific task.
I didn't know it was based on such academic reasons, but it's true.
Maybe VR will work better. Who knows? Still not that many. There's the Oculus Quest and Apple Vision Pro, but they are rather bulky devices and hard to program on them. That means trials. I guess the takeaway is, I don't know. They probably tried to match some functions to the positioning time. And those are the functions that they found. Oh, summary. It's nice. Okay, so according to them, mouse is optimal for text selection. Lower error rate, faster speed. Yeah. He name-dropped an interesting talk somewhere here. I will save this later. Okay, let's continue.
Was designed to abstract the physical reality of the computer away from the user. It was an enterprise machine, but its architecture, their single-level
I am currently developing a system, and I realize that I am developing it with the retro terminal interface without even realizing it, because it seems much more practical and understandable.
Yeah. If you like retro terminals, I remember in Alien, the movie Alien, they had this terminal. I don't know if you've seen this, but I was just melting over how well the original Alien movie, how well they showed the terminal.
Because modern browser interfaces have started to feel boring. If you look at the posts I repost on X, you'll understand which interfaces I'm referring to.
I will check this out. Oh, so you mean keyboard being used for control of the browser? Right? No, no, no. No, no, no. This is not how it works. It was a very subtle effect in that movie. Yeah, at the end. Yeah, I think that was this one. Yeah. You can analyze this frame by frame, and it's amazing how well this is designed. They wanted to convey that a terminal is a communication system where you just see something, you are talking with a computer, and the computer is beaming, the letters onto the screen. So each letter appears as an actual beam. You can also see that it changes colors. And then it uses those hieroglyphs that kind of seem to change shape as the letter appears. You also have this color variation that happens as it travels through the screen. And the crazy thing about this, that was all before computer graphics was a thing. It was all made manually with, cutouts and lights. And yeah, like each frame had to be created manually. It was a super short effect, but one of my most favorite motion graphics. But the browsers, yeah, true. They can be much more convenient when operated from a keyboard.
The LS offers one of the earliest and most profound examples of an associative human-computer interaction philosophies. Now, in a conventional operating system like Unix or DOS, the user is painfully aware of the difference between memory and storage. If you write a document in RAM and pull the plug, the document is gone. Now, a lot of the modern operating systems have different techniques to avoid this, but they weren't there. And it's still, as I said, fundamentally an engineering hack. Back in the day, to prevent all these problems, the user must perform a ritual save. This action takes data from the volatile workspace and inscribes it onto the permanent disk. The System 38 abolished this completely. It treated all storage, RAM and disk, as a single continuous address space. It used a mix of software and hardware to handle this memory management issue. It was all in one.
I was just about to tell you this. Within the next 10 years, terminal retro interfaces will once again become the interfaces people prefer. But I'm not so sure about VR.
You know, in VR you can still use a keyboard. And I don't think there will be... I mean, there is a place for VR, but when working, it's always good to have your immediate environment, you know, your, like the desk, the chair, the things around you, to have those things visible, because you don't want to, like, hit yourself. I think if even full VR will have some sort of immediate neighborhood awareness built in. Yeah. Is this retro terminal related somehow to AI? Because I know that for AI, text input or like text mode is a very natural way to kind of interface. I remember some kind of Conqueror. Yeah. It's probably an old thing. There are, like AI says, there are probably modern alternatives.
Of the user. And because system handles storage, the user interface of the System 38 and its operating system, or the control program facility, CPF, did not revolve around files in the traditional sense. Instead, it revolved around objects. Everything was a typed object: a program object, a user profile object, or a database file object. The OS understood what these things were. A user didn't navigate a directory tree. They managed a library of objects. The interface was a green screen on a terminal. It relied on a command language that was rigorously consistent. Every command followed a verb-noun structure. While the System 38 is often dismissed as a dinosaur due to its text-based interface, its interaction philosophy was arguably more advanced than the graphical systems that replaced it. In a modern Windows or Mac environment, a user might see a file called invoice.dat and not know which application opens it. On the System 38, the system knew exactly what the object was and how to present it. That system failed to revolutionize consumer computing because it was enormously expensive and complex. The overhead of managing that single-level store required powerful hardware. It did survive, however, as the IBM AS400, or what is now called IBM I, powering the back end of global finance and logistics. Complexity in the architecture can yield simplicity in the interaction. By taking on the boundary of memory management, the machine frees the user to focus on the data itself. Another example that I talked about in my
In the past 7 minutes, there was this thought about memory management, and that memory management can be done manually by the user or automatically by the machine. And obviously that's true. It's much easier if the system manages the memory for you. I'm not talking only about automatically saving files, but you also see this in programming, like garbage collection, like automatic stack-based memory allocation. But there's always a limit. If you want to operate at the edge of what your computer is capable of, automatic memory management is not going to be enough. There is also a need for explicit management. And I don't think those two approaches are really different. It's like those are just two features, and you have to implement at least one for your system to work. If you can implement both, but then there is more work that you have to do. So few systems, few programming languages, few applications, they ever have mixed mode. The mixed mode is probably the way to go.
My previous video about the history of graphical user interfaces is the Canon Cat. At its core, the Canon Cat was about textual streams. If IBM tried to solve the file problem from the server room, Jeff Raskin, the creator of Canon Cat, tried to solve it from a writer's desk. Raskin believed that the mouse was insufficient and that the windows were a distraction. He left Apple to build this anti-Mac machine, which ended up being the Canon Cat. It's a machine that embodied his principles of the humane interface. That was in 1987. The core
What are
idea
those?
of standard computing was that it forced users to fragment their attention. To write a letter, you opened a word processor. To calculate a budget, you opened a spreadsheet. Each open action broke a certain flow in the user's mind. The Canon Cat had no applications. It had no folders. And it had no operating system visible to the user. When you turned on the cat, you saw a cursor on a blank screen. This was not a document. It was a unified stream of text. The user's entire digital life, letters, notes, code, lists, existed in this single, long, continuous scroll. To perform a calculation, for example, the user didn't open a calculator app. They simply typed the math into the text stream and pressed the command key. The system evaluated the text in place and inserted the answer. Word processing and calculation were not modes the machine entered. They were operations performed on the universal data type. The challenge, of course, is if we had a 10,000-word text stream. What kind of navigation are we going to have? How do you find a specific letter you wrote 3 months ago without scrolling for hours? Raskin's solution here was the leap key, and it was located below the space bar where the thumbs rest. The two leap keys, leap forward.
It's fascinating that this was not only an operating system, it was actually integrated with hardware, so that it actually introduced dedicated hardware to navigate within the OS.
And leap backward were the primary navigation mechanism.
You could theoretically do the same with, Control or Alt or one of those 5 different modifier keys that old keyboards had.
To move the cursor, the user held down the leap key and typed the target text. To jump to the word apple, the user held leap and typed APP. The cursor immediately jumped to the first instance of that pattern. This is what Raskin called the quasi mode. A standard mode, like caps lock, for example, on our keyboard, is dangerous because the user can forget that they're in it, leading to potential errors. A quasi mode is maintained only through physical muscular tension, which is holding the key. The moment the user releases the key, the mode ends.
Having a single giant document, it sounds interesting. It sounds like a crazy idea. But a fun one.
This eliminates mode errors because the user's body is consistently aware of the state. Now, the Canon Cat was a commercial failure. It was marketed poorly as a word processor rather than a revolutionary way of computing. The world was already charmed with the visual dazzle of the Macintosh. However, lots of the ideas in CAT are now in the developer's world. The editor Vim uses similar keyboard-driven navigation. Spotlight on macOS and the Command K menus in modern web apps are direct spiritual successors to the Leap key. Mechanisms that allow users to jump contexts instantly via text. The CAT proved that text is a universal interface, a concept that is returning with a vengeance in the age of the AI and its chat interface. In the early 1990s, Apple attempted to create a new class of device, the PDAs, or the Personal Digital Assistants. The Newton Message Pad in 1993 is often remembered for its handwriting recognition quirks. But its true innovation lay in its file system, or rather the lack of it. The Newton OS was built around the concept of soups. In a desktop operating system, data belongs to an application. A .xls file belongs to Excel. If a calendar app wants to see that data, it needs to import it or use a complex API. On the Newton, there were no files. Data was stored in a system-wide database of objects called soups. And in that system, a contact created in the address book didn't live in the address book. It lived in the name soup. This meant that any application could access it. A third-party project management app could query the name soup and display contacts without needing permission or an API integration. This data liquidity allowed the Newton to implement an assistive interface that predates modern AI assistants like Siri by 2 decades. For example, the interface relied on gestures. A user could write "lunch with Bob tomorrow," and the assistive button would interpret this intent. It would query the name soup for Bob, the calendar soup for tomorrow, and creates a linked event. This reverse.
I wonder, in data representation, there is a way to store data which is argued to be like the universal storage format. This is called triplet store. I wonder if Newton actually had something like this. From the video examples, so here a second ago, it looked kind of like a, because the core idea with triplet stores is that you have everything in the system is either like atom, like just an identifier number. You can have numbered atoms, or a triplet. And triplets, each one is also an atom. So triplet combines 3 other objects, like the source, the destination, and the relation in between them. So this is a universal format because if you store any data as a bunch of triplets, you can always extend this. Like you can extend the, for example, a connection between 2 specific objects by using this identifier of the triplet to attach some properties to it. Or you can see what is the type of this connection and attach something, say something about the type of this connection in general. So yeah, triplets are super universal. And I wonder if Newton actually pursued this. The epoch would make sense because they have been very popular in 90s and 2000s, because this is when RDF was popular. RDF is just a knowledge representation format based on XML and triplets.
The standard computing interaction. Instead of open app, create.
But it's also possible that this Newton just used a couple standardized databases. There could just have been a, contacts database or calendar database in your system that all apps can connect to and use, and there you go. It's the same effect.
duplicate data, the Newton model was create data, system finds app. The user didn't need to know which app handled lunches. They just needed to know they wanted lunch. The Newton failed due to its hardware immaturity. The processors were too slow for accurate handwriting recognition. The screens were low contrast. However, the soup concept is the holy grail of modern mobile OS design. We see echoes of it in iOS's Spotlight or Android's Intents.
Intents. I know what are Android intents, but they are not related to data storage at all. So Android has Android has something like that. It tries to hide storage from you, but the intents are completely different mechanism. They are not related to data representation at all. The reason for this file system issue is that on Android, each application is given some kind of part of your device is dedicated to the application, and the application is free to store its own secrets there. And the operating system guarantees those secrets, those files that the application stores, the internal data of an app, is going to be protected from all of the other apps. It's going to be protected even from the user. User has no access on an Android device to the app's data. It is how it is. It's obviously not great for users, but both Apple and Android do this. It's a selling point for developers to develop on those systems, because then they can store, you can develop stuff like Snapchat, the ephemeral communication platform that will delete all of the files. That would not be possible on a regular computer, because how are you supposed to guarantee that data is going to be deleted? It's not possible. The user can make a copy. There could be other applications on the system that will hook the memory, extract the information. Yeah, it's just not possible to make Snapchat on desktop. But on mobile you can. The same for banking apps. Games with high degree of security, they also can function on operating systems like that, where users do not have full access to the operating system. But this is why file systems, I think, are hidden in Android, because this approach of separating and isolating apps, it means that the app data has to live in an isolated file system, sandboxed one, and if there is a common file system that all apps are using, there is something like this even on Android. But very few apps use this. Most of the time they just store data internally in their own storage, and then they can sometimes expose it through... There are like a bunch of systems within Android that apps can use to expose different types of data. Like if your app provides icons, like custom icons or custom fonts, sometimes they can be used by other apps, but you have to follow specific interfaces then. I don't know much about Apple Newton to really say whether it's related to how Android works.
But modern systems have actually regressed in some ways, locking the data back into the app sandboxes for security.
Yeah,
The Newton
exactly. Yeah.
remains a vision of a world where data is a shared resource, not a hoarded asset. Now, moving from this file system problem, and while IBM, Canon, and Apple focused on the structure of data, others focused on the visualization of it. Oberon was an operating system, a language, and a user interface all in one. But the true innovation of Oberon was active text. In a standard GUI, buttons are distinct from the text. In Oberon, any word could be a command. The user could middle-click it to execute that command. This meant that users could build their own interfaces simply by typing text. A menu wasn't a special system object. It was just a text file with a list of commands. After the Canon CAD, Jeff Raskin continued his work with a project called Archie, or the Humane Environment. Archie took the infinite stream of the CAD and added a spatial dimension to it, which was the zoomable user interface. I made a distinct video about zoomable user interfaces before. In the infinite plane of Archie, instead of windows opening and closing, Archie presented an infinite 2D plane. The user's data existed on this plane. To open a document, you didn't double-click an icon. You simply zoomed in on it. As you zoomed in, the representation changed from a speck to a headline to a full text. To close it, you zoomed out. The core concept of that interface was the reliance on spatial memory, remembering where things are. Archie removed the concept of launching an app. Tools were omnipresent. If you wanted to edit an image, you zoomed into the image. The image editing commands became available. The app was just a set of capabilities attached to a data type, not a walled garden you had to enter. Now, unfortunately, Archie was never completed, but its influence is visible in Infinite Canvas apps today. And again, there's some regression. The app sandbox resisted every single change that was attempting to get rid of it. And we have all these capabilities in separate apps, even if they utilized some of the concepts that were originally in Archie. Now, for decades, the concepts of the System 38 or the Canon CAT and the Newton, they were all admired by academics, but ignored by the market. They failed because they required too much from the user, which is learning a new paradigm after all that investment that went into the traditional paradigm that we live in, and the hardware requirements were quite high. The 2020s, however, have brought this shift. The emergence of generative AI and vector search has suddenly made the associative interface not just possible, but inevitable. We're witnessing the resurrection of these retro-futurist ideas, powered by engines that finally understand human intent. One of the
Okay, I do not have any evidence-based argument here, but to me, those search-based interfaces where you ask for something and system retrieves or tries to find relevant information or assemble the output, they always feel kind of unreliable and flaky to me. Because I prefer interfaces that are kind of stable, where I can put things at some locations and they stay there. You know, when things don't move. I mean, these search-based interfaces where things are stored in databases and they can be viewed from different angles and they always look differently from different angles. They are not as, I don't know, tangible to me. This is very subjective. I don't know if other people feel like that. But yeah, I like to have icons and to be able to put icons and have them stay where I've put them. And when you search for something, it's always shuffled. And things look always differently.
interesting and technical foundations of this modern renaissance is the vector database. In a vector database, information is stored as embeddings, which is mathematical representations of meaning in a high-dimensional space. In this space, the vector for dog is mathematically close to the vector of puppy. The vector for contract is close to agreement, sign, and legal. And this technology might make folders obsolete. A user does not need to store a file in a specific location and find it. They simply need to query the system with a concept. For example, a command like show me the legal documents about the plumbing project will retrieve the correct files even if the word legal never appears in them, because the system here understands the semantic relationship between the query and the content. And developers are now experimenting with what is called vector virtual file systems, vector VFS, where the OS itself indexes every file vectorially. This turns the entire hard drive into a soup. The file location
Nice.
becomes an
Yeah,
implementation
this is cool.
detail, irrelevant to the user. Now that was technical. There was also some interface work that is happening and that is interesting. Several modern startups are explicitly attempting to build the post-file world using these AI technologies. They might not work and they might have their own problems, but they are direct descendants of this can-and-cat concept or the Newton. For example, with mem.ai, which is a note-taking application, but in that single concept, it's asking us to forget about organization, which is something we see in a lot of these AI-supported services.
Yeah.
Limitless.
The organization of nodes is actually taking so much effort, probably more than taking the nodes themselves. Actually, this startup could have some merit to it.
Granola, and many others. There's also hardware. In 2024, two high-profile devices attempted to bring the post-app interface to hardware. There was the Rabbit R1 and the Humane AI Pin. Both were spectacular failures, or at least for the Humane AI Pin. The Rabbit R1 is still trying. These devices promised to free users from the app trap. Instead of opening Uber, selecting a destination, and
those devices, I think the main problem with those devices is that the phones already do this. So why do you need another device just to talk with AI? If you have a more, like a Swiss Army knife already in your pocket, it can talk with AI and it also has a screen, the speakers. You can watch movies on this, chat with other people, and sometimes you don't want to announce what you are doing. So, hardware-wise, if we've been like, if we were restarting computing from scratch, then maybe that would make sense. But given the historical baggage of apps and social media and everything, it's hard to displace smartphones.
confirming, the user would simply speak to an AI. Get me a ride home. The Rabbit uses what it's calling a large action model to operate underlying services, which are in fact cloud-based mobile operating systems. Now, regardless of the technical details, the R1 features a small screen and a scroll wheel. It's a completely different interaction model. The Humane Pin relied on voice and laser projections into their user's hand. And while the R1, as I said, hasn't failed yet, but the failure of the pen was that it underestimated the efficiency of the graphical user interface for confirmation. Speaking "order a pizza" is easy, but verifying toppings, price, and delivery time via voice is tedious.
Yeah.
The GUI allows scanning information in parallel. Voice forces serial processing. The most radical development in modern human-computer interaction is probably generative UI. This concept, championed by researchers at Google and some other companies, but probably Google has the most clear implementation of it, moves beyond generating text to generating the application or the interface. We have Google Disco, which is a consumer-facing experiment that demonstrates the ability to generate UI from text and taps. And there's A2UI, which is a developer-facing protocol or a standard that allows other agents to do exactly the same thing. And this is something that we'll likely see a lot more of in browsers.
Nice.
Some browsers, like Arc Search from the browser company, effectively unbrowses the web for the user so that the user doesn't have to spend lots of time going through different pages. It assembles information from different resources and put them in one.
Nice.
The
It
generative
combines
user-
multiple web pages into a single web page by LM, kind of summarizing and synthesizing a new web.
Interface is
Wow.
a bit more interactive. But as I said, it's likely to be in browsers, where we spend most of our time. And the browser war is something else that I made another video about. To a certain degree, we are currently circling back to the ideals of the 70s and the 80s, armed with the processing power to finally realize them. The file was a necessary evil for the scarce computing era, a mechanism to manage limited storage and limited processing power. The future interface is one of associative continuity, a single, searchable stream of information where the computer acts not as a warehouse manager, but as a co-thinker.
Really sweet. Yeah, I love this channel. Cool video. I have this reservation about dynamic interfaces, that they are not stable. I prefer to have something that's, consistent when I work with this. But okay, let's see. Why does Windows Release has issues now? Okay, we cannot seem to build Leptonica. This is strange. I don't care about warnings, I care about errors. Installing Tesseract finished with an error. Again, this is a warning. Also a warning. The warning about errors. Oh, I can resume music. And burned. And undefined symbol rand? What? I know there is rand in libc, but it should be there. Is it actually trying to fix this? Yeah, it is. I'm not sure if LLM probably correctly understands what this does. If I remember correctly, we had this defined a long time ago. So when configuring Leptonica, we are enabling this policy in the new mode. Will this help? Let's go to this directory. I actually think I should test this on my Windows device. This will tell me whether it's working or not, or what's up. So, give me a second. I will reconnect some cables. Sec. Okay, suddenly we're on Windows. Let's go to our Leptonica and do what the AI suggests, which is to get rid of this. Configuring Leptonica. Okay. And this configuration should fail, I think, because the AI said that it has hard-coded a different version of MSV CRT. So at link time we should have a crash, but this crash should be fixable with what? With this funny policy. I will not change this yet. Configuring Leptonica, it's probably taking a bit of time. Let's switch to compiling Leptonica in a sec. And it's compiling Automat on my laptop, which is going to take longer than my beefy desktop PC. Okay. We have some undefined symbols. So Leptonica is building against this different MSV CRT. Now time to add this policy and see if it has any effect. I think I will have to get rid of the release directory. Okay. But the good thing about the Windows crash that we have seen is that it crashed during linking Automat. So everything compiled, only linking caused issues. Which is, it probably means that, yeah, this is the last issue, and once this issue is solved, things work. Sweet. And this policy, it really deserves a comment. Oh. So, actually I can just delete those two lines. Commit, push, and that should fix the Windows build. We can switch back to Linux because there were also problems on Linux. These cut changes, Change the ones from GitHub. And let's see what is wrong in the Linux release. Let me just read this again to make sure I didn't mess anything up. Okay, okay. And this relevant to what's wrong in the Linux release. gperf not found or not executable. Why is systemd suddenly asking for gperf? How do you spell requiring? Requiring. Actually, I think this systemd, I think I added this systemd fairly recently. Let's see. When was this file added? One month ago. Yeah, exactly. I don't know why it's in Polish, but doesn't matter. I wanted to see a list of files. I'm checking this list of files because I have this file debian-deps, which can check for the presence of specific files, and if they are not present, we'll download them. So this will actually automatically install this file. I'm just double checking that everything still works. Nice. Okay. Push. Now, time to build it. Let's see actions. There is our new build. Last time, I think it failed after 12 minutes or 13 minutes, something like that. I'm optimistic about Windows release. Not so optimistic about Linux. I think if gperf failed, then it will probably also fail on other... Oh, already failed? Oh yeah, it just started a terminal so that we can... terminal, like a stage shell, so we can debug this. Yeah, so gperf works, but sys capability is... So the Linux build whatever, I can keep this. Is Windows building nicely? Yes, Windows is building nicely. Misclicking this. Okay. This is what we need. This is exactly the file that was missing. Just need to put it here. Like that. I think I should be able to cancel this build somehow. There was a button at the top. Cancel. Another attempt. There was an issue. It's nice to have Opus diagnose all of this. I think since this issue is it's only related to GitHub Actions, where those packages are pre-installed. So I'm not so sure we should always use the most recent one. This is not always the case. So this, more robust works across versions. It's like it works until you want to stick to a specific one. Is the Linux release? It is building. It is. It hasn't crashed yet. These are messages. So let's see how do we install all of those things. So switching to the next version of Visual Studio. Okay. because, yeah, there was this version issue, version mismatch. Your build tools already exists, but it's corrupted. What? It's probably from the downloader. I will wait for the Linux build to finish. I just want to see that this one thing at least works. It will take more time, and then I will fix the Windows build. I think we will stick to this ancient Visual Studio build tools. But if a more recent version is present, we'll just use the more recent version. Okay, so this is what we are downloading now. This is the installer. The installer for the build tools for 2022. It also has a nice URL, but this URL can be the contents at this URL, it changes. Let's see what happens. So I can delete it, download this file. What happens if I increase this number a little, like 17? It did download something. And there is no 18, 19. 20. Okay, so I can bump this number by 1. And theoretically, so that would be an easy switch. We'll just have to update all of the paths. Linux is still building. Still. Okay, I will switch back to Windows again and see if we can maybe hard-code the paths to the newer version. It's not updating very often, like every 4 years, so not a lot of work to update this single file every 3 or 4 years. Okay, Visual Studio Build Tools 2019. Goodbye. Yeah, I mean, and I think there is also SDK, Windows SDK, yeah. Another thing we could remove. Oh, it's actually removing the SDK. Taking so much time. Like it's just removing a couple of files. This should take. Oh, it should take seconds, not minutes. You know what? I will make a break before the workshop. Maybe take a nap or something. So we'll cut the stream here, and yeah, if you're coming to the workshop, see you at 7 in about 5 hours. And everybody else, see you on Friday. Bye bye.